What's up, guys? James here with Fun Fact of the Day. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day, learning lots, and getting stuff done. Today, I'm here to talk about the latest and greatest craze in fake meat, and that is the Impossible Burger. We'll also touch quickly on the Beyond Burger, which is a close competitor to the Impossible Burger. So, in case you've been living under a rock with Patrick, the Impossible Burger is a food made by a company called Impossible Foods that is intended to replicate meat. Basically, their goal is to make something look and taste and smell and feel like an actual hamburger without having any actual meat products. And that is no easy task. They've spent over 5 years developing their original formula, and now, 3 years later, they've come out with a new one, and everybody is losing their minds. So, the question today is, what the heck is in this magical burger? Is it healthy? Is it worth eating? Should you try one? Obviously, you should try one just to see what it's like. But today, we're mostly going to go over what is in the actual burger. The first ingredient is water. I know, pretty crazy ingredient. You got to be careful with that stuff. People have died from water. The second main ingredient, which of course is then the second most abundant ingredient in the burger, is soy protein concentrate. This is basically what happens when you take a soybean and you strip off all the hull. It's called dehulling. And then you take away all the fat, and then you scoop away a bunch of the carbs, and you're left with mostly protein, usually about 70%, and then about 30% of fiber and some random minerals. This is commonly used in protein bars and all sorts of things. It's basically a cheap alternative protein powder, and they also use it in animal feed for livestock and farming. It's extremely common in that industry. Then, the next ingredient is coconut oil. You've seen it, you've heard of it, it's the latest craze on the internet. Basically, you squeeze a coconut, you get a bunch of oil. It's almost entirely saturated fat. If you haven't heard of saturated fat, it's basically a fat that has all the hydrocarbons filled. Most people consider this an unhealthy fat, which begs the question, why is coconut oil so healthy if it's all saturated fat? I have no idea. You've got me on that one. But it's in there, it's the third ingredient, and that means it is very prominent. The fourth ingredient, the next most prominent ingredient in the burger, is sunflower oil. Basically the same thing. Squeezed a bunch of sunflowers, got the oil. I'm sure it's a different process than that. But at the end of the day, that actually has a lot of unsaturated fat, specifically polyunsaturated fat, which is generally considered to be a good fat. People like it. Dietitians generally agree that it's healthy. I'm not going to go into why because I'm not a dietitian and this isn't an actual diet video. Then, the ingredients following are all less than 2%, which means that there's a very, very minuscule amount of them, and most of them are thickeners and preservatives. But we'll go through the list here just because it's interesting, and you never know what all these random things are. So, the next thing is natural flavors. Nobody really knows what that is. It's in LaCroix, too, and who knows? So we're going to leave it at that. It's a proprietary blend, I'm sure. And if you want to know what it is, get a job at Impossible Foods, work your way up the food chain, and then ask them what it is, because they might know. The next thing is potato protein, usually used as a thickener. After that, we've got methyl cellulose, which is a laxative that is also used as a thickener, which is kind of ironic, because it's made to not thicken something else. After that, you've got yeast extract, which is also usually used as a thickener, and occasionally can be used as a preservative. Cultured dextrose, which is basically just sugar, probably for flavoring. Modified food starch is the next ingredient, which, just like all these other ones, is a thickener. Soy leghemoglobin is the next ingredient, and that is basically red stuff that's been pulled out of a soy plant that kind of looks like blood. The goal is to emulate blood, and it has the kind of smell and aroma and look that blood has, and so they've used it in their burger. Salt is the next ingredient. That's a classic preservative used since forever. They've been salting meat since the dawn of time. Soy protein isolate is the next ingredient. That's just some soy. And after that, we've got a whole bunch of various chemicals that are basically vitamins and minerals. They've got vitamin B6s and vitamin B12s and niacin and all sorts of things that meat has a lot of in order to try to emulate meat. So, now the question it begs, is this a healthy alternative to meat? Well, if you look at the nutrition facts, which I'll put up here, the fat to protein ratio is almost exactly that of about a 30 to 33% fat burger. So, if you were to compare it to ground beef and actual burgers that you might eat, you'd want to look at things like fast food burgers or burgers that you buy in a giant pack in the frozen section for big family barbecues that are really fatty. Your average ground beef that you would buy to, make 4 burgers for your family at home generally is an 80-20 mixture of fat to protein, or up to maybe down to a 7% protein, which is much leaner. There's a lot less fat, a lot more protein per gram of the food. So, if you're looking for a really fatty alternative to a burger, I would definitely recommend the Impossible Burger. Apparently you can find them at Burger King now, and apparently they're trying to be at over 1,000 restaurants worldwide by the end of this year. So, we'll see. The competitor, the Beyond Burger, I'll touch on quickly, is basically the exact same thing, except for instead of soy protein isolate as being the main thing, they use a pea protein and a rice protein. So, imagine they ground up a bunch of peas, took the protein out, poured it in a bunch of oil. You got a Beyond Burger. The oils are slightly different. Instead of sunflower oil, they actually use canola oil, which is the same stuff that you find in your pantry for cooking. And other than that, it's almost an identical ingredient list. They're both highly processed and, to quote the CEO of Whole Foods, super highly processed. He actually condemns eating them, even though he carries them at all of his stores and launched both brands through his stores because they are very highly processed and not really in any way equivalent to meat aside from the caloric intake. So, you can be the judge on whether or not these are healthy. If this was interesting at all to you, I know it wasn't as funny as most of the videos I've made lately, leave a like down below, subscribe if you're looking for more interesting content, and of course, some comedy every now and then. If you're interested in watching some of those videos, I post new ones every day, and there's a huge playlist of them right here. Every one I've made up to this point, and they are all outstanding. So, that's all for me today, and I will see you tomorrow.